Hi, my name is Allie Stolder with Williamson Crop Insurance, and I'm going to continue our prevent plant and our late plant presentation. If you had not already had the chance to, I would go back and listen to Greg's version, the beginning of this presentation. He walks through the regulations and more of the basic parts of the policy with this. I'm going to actually continue on with some frequently asked questions, so I'm kind of going to be going all over the board. But again, if you have not listened to Greg's version, the beginning of this, go ahead and do that before you listen to mine. So first off, how do they determine my eligible corn acres? How do they even do this? What they'll look at, your AIP, the insurance provider that is covering your policy, they're going to look at the last 4 years of your history. So that for this year is 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And the maximum acres, and we're talking corn here, so the maximum corn acres that you've planted or have been prevent planting, combination of the two, in the last 4 years, that is going to be what you're eligible for. And the verbiage at the beginning of this, it says not requiring processor contracts. All that means is popcorn. That's popcorn in our area. You need a processor contract. So this is working with corn and soybeans. Looks at the last 4 recent years. And I'll get into an example on this. So I'm looking at a 1,000-acre farmer, and I'm going to use this example of this operation multiple times through this part of the PowerPoint. So a 1,000-acre farmer reported the following acres of corn. In 2020, they planted 400. 2021, they planted 100 acres, and then they were prevented from planting 400 acres, so a total of 500 there. 2022, they planted 200 acres. In 2023, no corn acres at all. It all went to soybeans. In this scenario, the maximum eligible acres that they have for corn for this year is 500, and that's based off of the 2021 crop year. And again, that's the 100 planted plus the 400 prevented from planting that makes up that 500. Continuing on with that, let's say on May 25th, which 6 days ago, everybody was going pretty hard around that time. May 25th, you planted 150 acres of corn. Therefore, in this situation, you have 350 acres of prevent plant eligibility left. And what I want to hone in on this is, since you planted 150, you don't have 500 left. It's the 500 minus the 150 that you planted. You're eligible for the other remaining 350 acres. Also, something to highlight, eligibility does not necessarily equal your intended. And why we say that is, even if you're eligible for 500 acres of corn, if you weren't intended on that and don't have seed receipts and proof to show that you were actually going to plant 500 acres of corn, that won't jive. You need to have something that says you were intending on that many acres of corn. If this was going to be a all soybean year for you, it's going to be hard to do a prevent plant corn claim if you don't have anything to show that that's what you were intending to do. Another question, I have wheat acres certified at FSA that I plan to destroy, and am I eligible for prevent plant corn or soybeans on those acres? The answer is no. And the reason for that is, if you have a standing wheat field, and even if it's not up to par or something that you don't like, they're not going to allow you to destroy a standing crop and then turn around and file prevent plant on that. Thankfully, in our area this year, wheat's looking, I think, pretty decent. So I don't think we're going to run into this a lot, but it's something to note. You can't destroy that and then turn around and file prevent plant corn on it. Something to talk through that doesn't necessarily go with this, but if you plant corn or soybeans on a destroyed field, so you don't file prevent plant on that field that you destroyed the wheat on, you actually plant the corn, those corn acres, as a reminder, will go against your overall eligible acres of that 500. It'll count against that, even though the wheat you destroyed on it, whether that corn acres is insured or not, it will go against your prevent plant eligibility. Next question, I have alfalfa acres that winter killed. If I collect a payment from FSA through their NAP program, am I eligible for prevent plant on those acres? No. And the reason is if you destroy that, you've collected a payment through their program. So for RMA, when they're looking at that, you've already collected, not an indemnity, but you've gotten a collection off of that. They're not going to let you turn around and file for a claim to get another payment through that. But another point to remember is if you've planted a cornfield after destroyed alfalfa, that is insurable as long as you don't take that first cutting ahead of time. And so if you have an alfalfa field, didn't make it, you tear that up, plant corn there, your corn's fine, that's insured. If you took a first cutting of that before you planted the corn acres, that is, your corn will not be insurable unless you had something, a written agreement done ahead of 3/15 that allowed, March 15th, that allowed you to do that. So something to remember there. What if I added ground in 2024? So in this example, you're a 1,000-acre farmer and your neighbor retired. He had 300 acres and you are now farming that, giving you a total of 1,300 acres for your operation. They're going to take that new acreage amount of 1,300 acres and divide it by last year's amount of what you farmed, divided by the 1,000. That gives you a 1.3 factor. So remember, we had originally had 500 acres of eligible corn acres. They're going to take that, multiply it times our new 1.3 factor of added ground. You now are eligible for 650 corn acres between planted and prevent planting. So they're going to allow you to add more acres if you've added ground to your operation. Another point to add to that is there's been some language change on this the last few years that we want to make sure we point out. Acres need to be planted, harvested, and insured in at least one of the last 4 years to be eligible for prevent plant. This actually applies to your existing farm ground also. So before I get into the example that I have on this slide, I want to point out one. Let's say you were farming and your neighbor, again, a different neighbor, retired and only had 40 acres of ground, and you're now going to farm that cash rent for him. He's planted it for 20 years, all 3 crops, corn, beans, and wheat, but he's never carried insurance. He had a full-time job elsewhere, didn't see the need to, that wasn't his, farming wasn't his main income, so didn't insure it, and now you're farming that. Just know that is not eligible for prevent plant because it has not been insured in one of the last 4 years. It's been planted and harvested, but not insured. Another example I think we could run into is this one. So Farmer Smith has a rotation of corn, soybeans, and wheat. He has only insured his corn recently. He wants to file prevent plant corn on those 40 acres that has been beans or wheat the last 4 years. He's not eligible to do that. And the reason is even though he's owned it and has planted it and harvested for years, but he's only insured corn. In the last 4 years, it's been beans or wheat. He does not have prevent plant coverage on that field because it has not been insured in one of the last 4. So something to remember as we're dealing with the little bit of the wet spring that we have. Okay, next question. I have elected enterprise units on my corn. If I have prevent plant, will my premium be affected? Possibly. That is because in order to qualify for an enterprise unit discount, you need to have planted that crop. So planted is the key in at least 2 sections in that county, and 20 acres or 20% of that crop, whichever is less between the two, we call it the 20-20 rule, needs to land in that second section. So without this qualification, you're still insured. That's no problem. You still have the coverage there. We just want you to know that your premium on that will no longer have that enterprise unit discount. It's going to revert to what we call a basic unit, which is noticeably higher in premium when that bill comes late summer, early fall on that. So an example on this too, if you have 100 or more planted and prevent plant acres combined, at least 20 acres planted in 2 sections or more is required to keep the enterprise unit discount. So that's a total of 40 acres. And here's a graph that kind of shows that. So in this scenario, let's say we're in section 4 of Washington Township. Let's say we have 15 acres planted this year of corn. Section 5 of that same township, we have another 15 acres planted. Section 6, not drained well, we had to file prevent plant on that on 70 acres. So 100 acres total in this scenario, and that's the breakdown of what our spring is looking like at the moment. In this scenario, this farmer does not qualify for the enterprise unit discount. It's all still insured. His planted acres are insured as well as his prevent plant. He's eligible for a prevent plant payment on that section 6 ground, but he doesn't qualify for that enterprise unit discount because we don't have that 2020 rule met in those other sections. Say we change that a little bit. So still 100 acres, but now in Washington Township of section 4, 20 are planted. Section 5, another 20 acres are planted, and in section 6, we're now at 60 acres that were prevented from planting. In this scenario, yes, it does qualify for that enterprise discount. So still insured like the other previous slide, but now you get that discounted premium that you would have elected to have that enterprise unit at that March 15th. That discount still applies in this situation. How do I report prevent plant acres? So it's a 4-step process is how we're looking at it, starting with step 1. So starting on June 6th, which is the day after the final plant date on corn. So June 6th, if you don't have all your corn in the ground and still have acres left to plant, we're really encouraging you to give us a call and turn in a potential notice of loss on prevent plant on corn. This doesn't commit you to that. It just says, it alerts the adjusters and alerts the company that, hey, I'm not planted. I potentially am going to file prevent plant corn on this. Same thing on soybeans. June 21st is the first day you can do that on beans. And we're encouraging you that if you don't have all your beans planted by the 21st, the final plant date is the 20th. So the 21st, we can turn in a claim. Give us a call to do that. Step 2. So let's say it's gotten further in, and yes, we are committed to that. We ended up not withdrawing the claim on prevent plant. We're going to take prevent plant. You need to report those prevent plant acres at the FSA office. Very important that they say the same thing that we do. Step 3, once you've done that, record the prevent plant acres on the acreage report. We mailed those out last week, so you should have those by the time you're listening to this PowerPoint. Record those same exact acres on your acreage report that you have at FSA, so we match. So if it's 40 acres, write that down. And under the plant date, since there's no plant date, you write prevent plant, PP. And then step 4, work with your adjuster to finalize the claim. We're just saying they're going to be communicating with you more than normal on a normal harvest loss year with prevent plant. So just communication is very important on any claim year, but especially with prevent plant. So, and at that point, once we have turned in your claim and reported your acres and answered any questions that you've had, once the claim has started, it's really, we have to be removed from the claim, so you need to be working with adjusters. Can we answer questions here and there? Yes, but we can't be involved with it at that point. That's who you're going to be. You're going to be working primarily with the adjuster after that. When would my prevent plant claim be paid? And those will be paid after we have a signed acreage report from you is one of the steps. And our reminder, the deadline for that is July 15th. And if we get your acreage report on July 15th, I can guarantee you it will not be keyed that same day, because that's when a lot of our documents come in and we get kind of bogged down a little bit in the office. So it'll take a few days for the girls to get it keyed. And then we also reconcile that with the 578 at FSA. So we need, again, to reiterate, we need a copy of that shows those prevent plant acres also. After we have it keyed into our system, the adjuster can now see that. So the adjuster is going to verify everything with your acreage report and 578, and then they're also going to check that field to ensure that you don't have another crop planted there. So they want to make sure you didn't file prevent plant corn and then turn around and claim that, go forward with that prevent plant claim, and then turn around and have a standing crop there, a soybean crop. If you do, you run into some scenarios there that definitely jeopardize your prevent plant claim. So it's going to be after they've verified that and we have everything keyed into our system that it can be paid. So late August at the very earliest. It's probably going to be even later than that. Next question, I have prevent plant ground and put a cover crop on my prevent plant ground. Can I harvest my cover crop? And the answer is no. You can never harvest that crop. So when we say harvest, we mean taking the seed off of that crop. So for instance, rye, that's the first one that comes to my mind. You go through and clip the head off of that and take that seed. You have now harvested that cover crop. In the crop insurance world, when they look at that, you've harvested it. That for sure will jeopardize your prevent plant claim. Now, you can hay or graze that. So if local dairy or for feed, if you need that, it can be hayed or grazed. That's no problem, but it cannot be harvested for seed. The main thing is communicate. Definitely communicate with your adjuster prior to doing anything with a cover crop to make sure it just does not jeopardize that payment for you. Here's a graph that we have that lays that out a little bit. This came from the loss manual that puts this in a little bit better perspective. So if you plant that cover crop before the final plant date or during the late plant period of the prevented crop, so let's say corn, if you plant it before June 5th or during that late plant period, so that gets you to June 25th. Okay, you can, and you plant a cover crop there, you can hay, graze, cut it for silage, haylage, or baleage anytime, and you get that full, you still are eligible for that full prevent plant payment on your corn. However, if you harvest it for grain, so that's saying taking the head or the seed at any time, either by you or your neighbor, if they want to pay you to get that, it doesn't matter if it's you or somebody else, you have completely forgone your prevent plant corn payment. So pretty big deal. Here below, this is saying if you plant after the late plant period, so if we're past our June 25th date, which is the end of the late plant period for corn, and you plant a cover crop there, again, if you take it for silage, haylage, or baleage, you're fine. If you harvest the grain for seed at any time on that, there's a little asterisk here. And this is something, again, communication with us and your adjuster. There's a scenario where you would get paid 35% of your prevent plant payment, assuming the cover crop is not the prevented crop. So that language is a little confusing. If you get to where you are doing anything with that cover crop, again, just call us, call your adjuster, make sure we know what you're doing. We for certain don't want that payment of your prevent plant to be jeopardized from a cover crop. I do not want my money from the claim this year. Can I have my claim worked and finalized and request my insurance company to hold the money until January? No, they cannot do that. So once the claim is finished, they are required to, within 30 days, once you've signed off on it, 30 days to complete the claim and submit that up to their financials for processing and send that out. So they're going to pay it once it's done. They want to get them moving. However, you can check with your accountant on this. If they say, and we've had this back in 19, if they say that you've had a history of claiming that income the next year by how you sell your grain and move your income to the following year, you may be able to do that with this. Just know that the company is not going to hold paying that claim till January 1 for you to get it the next year. One more thing to note, this isn't a frequently asked question, but we want to make you aware of it. If you started to plant soybeans in a field, let's say last week, the end of last week, and then it kept raining and you just could not get back in there to finish that field. And we're well into June, past June 20th, the final planting on beans, and you just can't finish that field. We want you to know that you cannot go back on those remaining acres and file prevent plant corn on the remainder of that field. It is now considered a bean field, so you would be able to still have prevent plant on the rest of that field, assuming you have eligible acres. It's just not going to be paid at a corn which is typically a higher payment than your bean payment. It won't be paid at that. You'll have to file prevent plant beans on it, unless you've had a history in the last 4 years of split cropping that field. And that concludes the rest of our prevent plant, late plant, frequently asked questions part. Then I just want to thank you for trusting our agency and us as agents, and thank you for your business allowing us to work with you. If you have questions at any time, definitely reach out to us, to our office or our cell phones if you have those, and we'd be happy to answer them at any time. Thank you.